Most people wait until they feel ready to start growing food. By the time they feel ready, the window is closing. April is not just another month on the planting calendar. It is one of the few moments in the entire year where the decisions you make in the next 2 or 3 weeks will either build real food security or push everything back by 12 months. Miss these windows and you are not late. You are starting over next spring. This channel is not about the prettiest backyard on the block. It is about crops that actually feed a family, plants that produce in real quantities, store well, and grow in the kind of space most people actually have. Small yards, raised beds, side lots, a few containers on a back porch. 7 crops matter most right now, and almost every one of them works in a small space. Let's get into it. The first 2 crops belong together, and most people get at least one of them wrong. String beans and peas are both legumes. They both fix nitrogen in the soil, which means they improve the ground while they feed you. They both produce fast. The part that trips people up is that they have completely opposite relationships with temperature, and planting them at the wrong time wastes the entire effort. String beans are frost-sensitive. They go in after your last frost date, full stop. Push them in too early, one cold night takes everything. The good news is they are forgiving in almost every other way. Direct sow them an inch deep, water them in, and they will germinate in 5 to 7 days in warm soil. Lean soil is not a problem. Containers and raised beds work just as well as in-ground. For small spaces, bush varieties are the practical choice. Compact, no tall trellising needed, and a single 4x4 bed succession planted every 3 weeks through summer will produce more than most people expect. Peas are the opposite. They do not want summer. They want to be in the ground 2 to 4 weeks before your last frost date, which means if you have not planted them yet, you are already in the narrow end of the window. Temperatures consistently above 80 degrees make peas tough, fibrous, and basically inedible. The harvest window closes fast. People lose entire seasons this way. They plant too late, the heat ruins the crop, and they blame the garden. The problem was the timing. For small spaces, dwarf bush pea varieties will grow in a 10-inch container and still give you a real harvest. Get these 2 right and you have the foundation of a productive spring system. Miss them and you are waiting until fall for a second chance. Now the crops get more serious from a food security standpoint. Sweet potatoes do not get the respect they deserve in backyard food production. Most people treat them like a novelty, something fun to try once. Understandable mistake. Sweet potatoes are one of the most calorie-dense crops you can grow at home. They store for months without refrigeration. They thrive in the kind of brutal summer heat that destroys other plants. And in a world where grocery prices keep climbing, a stored supply of sweet potatoes in a cool corner of your basement or garage is meaningful in a way that a bag of salad greens is not. The catch is timing, and it is not flexible. Sweet potatoes are not grown from seed, and they are grown from slips, small vine cuttings rooted from a mature sweet potato. That rooting process takes 6 to 8 weeks, and the slips do not go into the ground until 3 to 4 weeks after your last frost date, because these are tropical plants that need warm soil and warm nights. Do the math and the problem becomes obvious. If you want to plant slips in late May or early June, you needed to start rooting them in April. Some of you watching this still have time. Not much, but some. I remember the first year I understood this and felt genuinely frustrated. Not at the plant, but at how nobody had explained the timeline clearly. You do not just buy slips and plant them. You plan for them weeks in advance or you miss the window. For small spaces, containers and grow bags actually work well here. Large fabric grow bags, stacked and hilled as the plant grows, will produce a real harvest on a back porch or a small patio. The yield is not the same as a garden bed, but it is real. Stored sweet potatoes are calories your family is not buying from a store. If this is the kind of thinking that makes sense to you, building a backyard that actually feeds your family instead of just looking productive, there is a lot more on this channel along those lines. Storage, spacing, soil, system design, all of it built for ordinary backyards and real budgets. If you have not subscribed yet, now is a good time. Hit the button and you will not miss what is coming next. Summer squash and cucumbers share the same problem, and it is the reason most people end up with a 2-week harvest window and nothing else. They plant one round, get a strong flush of production, and then watch the plants burn out. Heat stress, powdery mildew, vine borers depending on where you live. Summer squash and cucumbers have a hard ceiling on how long a single planting stays productive. Plant once and walk away, and the season is mostly over before August. The fix is succession planting. Start a new round of seeds every 4 to 6 weeks. When the first planting fades, the next one is coming on. This sounds obvious once you hear it, but most people never do it because nobody explained why the first round stopped producing. For small spaces, cucumbers are one of the better choices precisely because they grow vertically. A single plant trained up a fence or a simple trellis takes almost no floor space and will produce dozens of cucumbers over a season. Compact bush squash varieties fit in a single raised bed or a large container. Neither of these requires a lot of land. They require a plan. One thing worth noting on cucumbers specifically, do not rush them into the ground just because the frost date has passed. These are tropical plants. Cold nights in the 40s will set them back badly. Let the nights warm up consistently 2 to 3 weeks past your last frost before you transplant them out. There is one crop on this list that almost nobody brings up in the context of food security, and it may be the most useful one for getting through summer. Swiss chard is a biennial. It does not bolt when summer heat arrives the way lettuce, spinach, and most brassicas do. When your other greens are going to seed and becoming inedible in July, Swiss chard is still producing. It is one of the only leafy greens that will give you a usable harvest through the full summer season. For a backyard food system, that gap matters more than people realize. Greens are nutritious, they grow fast, and they fill the space between your larger harvests. A few plants of Swiss chard is the difference between having fresh food through August and waiting months for fall crops to come in. It works in raised beds, in containers, in almost any setup, and it can be direct sowed right now. This is one of those things that sounds small until you are standing in your backyard in the middle of a hot July wondering what there is to eat. The last crop on this list is potatoes, and they close this video for a reason. Potatoes are calorie-dense. They store for months in the right conditions. They grow in containers, grow bags, raised beds, any setup where you can give them enough depth to form tubers. A few stacked grow bags on a back porch can produce a meaningful harvest. The planting window in most of the country opens right now in late April, as soil temperatures climb and the threat of a hard freeze mostly passes. A lot of people assume you need real land to grow potatoes in meaningful quantities. You do not. You need depth, decent soil, and consistent water. Dump the bags at harvest and you will be surprised what comes out. What connects all 7 of these crops is not the growing method or the space they take up. It is the role they play. Every one of them either produces calories and volume, stores through winter, fills a seasonal gap, or does something that store-bought produce simply cannot do for a family trying to rely less on the grocery store. A backyard can look productive and still leave a family completely dependent on the store. Closing that gap is what this channel is about. For people who want a more organized framework for building this out as a system, there is a guide called the Backyard Miracle Farm System that walks through it step by step. The link is in the pinned comment. Drop a comment before you go. Which of these 7 are you starting this week, and where are you watching from? Growing zones and climates vary more than most people realize, and it helps to know who is out there. If this video was useful, hit the like button and subscribe. More practical content on the way, built for real backyards. I would start the sweet potato slips today. That 6 to 8 week rooting window does not wait, and this is the one crop on this list where a late start costs you the whole harvest.